my game day ritual for the game, for those 3.5 to 4 hours, I'm unreachable.
It's the arrival. I came in the league, went straight for the title.
Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvelous. Gets past Ransom. Donovan Edwards. Touchdown. The Don.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State.
This is The Rivalry, sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
Welcome to the Rivalry Podcast. I'm Jace. That's JP, your garbage-free college football podcast focused on the game. Wheel route today going to be a little bit different. It is still brought to you by our friends at the J Company. Fall in love with your home all over again at the JAEcompany.com. I am remote today. And so, JP, you want to do something a little different with wheel route today?
Yeah, so I've got a question that I just wanted to make sure we touched on a little bit, because I feel like I've seen this. It was brought up a lot last year, and it's starting to be a recurring thing, especially going into this year. And the question is, and this will be our wheel route question for the day, if Ryan Day loses this game, is he officially on the hot seat?
Absolutely. Like, I don't think that's a question. There's no way you can be handed what Ryan Day was handed and then lose 3 straight. I just don't. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, because I know that fan bases on both sides get very antsy. Mm-hmm. I get that. But if the question isn't, is it right for him to be on the hot seat? The question is he on the hot seat? 100%. Because so far for him, the moments have been too big. You know, the moments have been too big. If he loses this one, you've now lost 3 games in a row to Michigan. You have not made the Big Ten championship in 3 years, and you've lost the only playoff appearance you had in between there. I don't know. I don't know that the fan base and the administration can stomach it. And that's I kind of said that coming into this year too, where I thought at the beginning of the year that if he lost to Michigan, that he was done. And I don't think that that's the case anymore. I had figured that they would probably lose a handful of games this year that they didn't. So I think he's safe, but I don't think he's got much leash left if he loses this one.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with what you just said more than I disagree with it. And last year I was on the fence. I was more towards the no. But there's just a different standard when you're a coach at Ohio State. There's a different standard when you're a coach at Michigan. Even I would say at Alabama, if you're seeing it with Dabo Swinney right now, where with Clemson, they're starting to fall apart, and 4 losses for a team like that from what they were is unacceptable. And I think now it's tough to say, yes, he's on the hot seat when you look at his record. I mean, regular season stuff is great. But Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, they care about the playoffs. They care about postseason. Yep. And if you're not bringing home championships, they don't care if you're 11-0. If you're losing to your rival, they don't care if you're 11-0. They don't care if you're beating up on Michigan State and Minnesota. Ohio State could be 0-11, but if they go 1-0 against Michigan, that coach is safe for another year. That's kind of the standard Ohio State has set. The thing that I think puts me over the edge to where I agree with you more this year is Sherrone Moore coming in to be the coach. Yep. And I think all the momentum, all the favor right now is on Ohio State's side. After two back-to-back seasons where you lost at Michigan, you lost last season at Ohio State by numerous scores, you go into a game where you should be feeling pretty confident. Your offense has played better. Your defense has been playing at an elite level all year. And now you're going up against an interim coach.
Yep.
If you're Ryan Day, this is a must-win game for numerous reasons, but for your job's sake. And I don't think if he loses, I don't think he's going to get fired. But I think going into next year, I think the term hot seat
is no leeway.
Yeah, the hot seat is okay. Well, his seat's getting warm now. You've turned the heat cushions on, and next year your butt's going to be a little toasty. You're going to have to come out, and next year will be the prove it year. If he loses this year, goes in next year again, and loses again, he's out. In my opinion.
Well, and look at the talent that he's had the last couple of years, especially with C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson.
And
There's a lot of like.
Some of that's been a little bit iffy because you've had like Smith and Jigba sat out all last year. You didn't have Travion Henderson for a majority of last year. You didn't have
but Michigan went into the game in Columbus without the guy who would have won the Heisman if he stays healthy. So
yeah.
I mean, it's
injuries
the same.
on both sides.
It's the same thing. Where like, yeah, there can't be. There's no excuses at this point. And that's the beauty and pain of the game is nobody cares if you're missing Blake Corum. Nobody cares if you're missing Egbuka. Like you have to go. Nobody cares that you're missing Harbaugh. You've got to go out and win.
Well, because
nobody
when you're a
else
program
cares.
with a standard like Michigan and Ohio State has, it's next man up mentality. You're recruiting 5-star guys every single day. You saw it, I mean, a little bit with Ohio State this past week, and you saw it a little bit last year where our injuries at running back were so low. We were bringing Dallin Hayden in, who was supposed to redshirt, and he was still putting up 100-something yard games. I mean, that is the talent gap that you have at these universities where the expectation is, okay, you saw it with Ohio State even this year where you go in and people are going, okay, well, you lost CJ, so who's going to be your next quarterback? And people thought Kyle McCord was going to drop a couple games, and here we are 11-0. And that's just, I would still say, while I don't agree Kyle is an elite level quarterback by any means, he's probably the second best quarterback in the Big Ten right now.
He's gotten the job done so far, at least, at the very least. And I would agree. I think he's definitely at least in the top 3. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Now this conference also has Hudson Card as a starting quarterback. So,
that's fair.
There's that too.
Quarterback Michigan State decides to throw out there. So.
Are they still playing football? Did they just give up the season?
If that's what you want to call, they did win this week. So
good for them, man.
I think they're at 4 now, which congratulations. Yeah,
Northwestern's going to a bowl game and Michigan State's not. Which that just warms the depths of the heart, Want to say a big thank you, by the way, before we kind of recap last week briefly and head into talking about the game. Want to say thanks to our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction for sponsoring the podcast. Aaron Carroll and the team do a phenomenal job. And as you look toward the holidays, we start thinking about, what? This next year as we go into, a building season and we're looking at our church or home or business, Elevated Integrity Construction, there's no guesswork. Integrity is literally in the name. Go with integrity. You can find them at elevatedintegrity.com. Do also want to mention that now is a great time to become a Patreon subscriber, to join on Patreon. We've got rivalry stickers. We've got rivalry merch. You get access to exclusive content. We've got blogs that go up every week. Some of them are free. Some of them are just exclusive. So if you can't get enough of the rivalry, check it out on Patreon. Consider becoming a subscriber, helping us say yes to more opportunities to better content for you. riverradio.com/rivalry and at RivalPod across social media. JP, I feel like before we recap, we do need to kind of talk through this real quick. So here's a fun tidbit. So the Rivalry is a podcasting arm of River Radio based out of Columbus. And so for years now, we've been credentialed for a lot of Ohio State home games. We've done Penn State. We've done the college football playoff. We've done Notre Dame. We went up to Ann Arbor for Bowling Green this year. And we just found out in the last week or so that we're going to be in Ann Arbor for the game this weekend, which is phenomenal. We've done it in Columbus. We've never gotten to do it in Ann Arbor. So that's exciting for us. But here's the fun thing. So JP and I have been both credentialed for this, and we're trying to figure out, do we both want to go to this game, and can we sit next to each other?
If you've never understood the heat of the rivalry, this perfectly encapsulates every single part of it.
It's so dumb. Like, I was trying to explain to my wife, we were looking at going up. It's like, well, what if, do we need to drive separately? And we were trying to weigh like the cost of that. And I was telling my wife this, man, we're just having this consternation. She looked at me and she said, "You are grown men. Figure it out." And that's fair.
Hurtful.
That's fair. Hurtful. But also hurtful, truthful, but also,
you know what?
I don't know. I don't know.
I had this same exact conversation because, and I've had this as the Michigan flag starts to fall, which hopefully is a little fortune telling to this weekend.
Just sounds like you didn't do a good job. Sounds like you weren't tough enough. Where's Lou right now?
Wow. Lou Holtz is eating oatmeal at a local diner with Stetson Bennett, reading the newspaper. It's genuinely like my game day ritual for the game is so different than any other time that I watch college football. Because for those 3.5 to 4 hours, I'm unreachable. I am going to sit in my basement or in another room, closed off from any civilization. My phone will be face down so that I cannot see text. I can't see anything. I will be
absolutely
off the grid as far as anybody else is concerned. I will not do anything. Those hours, don't plan anything. Don't call me. And it goes the same for once the game is done, regardless of the outcome. Don't call me and try to like talk about it to celebrate. I am emotionally exhausted from the nerves. And so last year I went to the Ohio State game for Michigan at the Shoe. I did it because I thought this is a once in a lifetime potential opportunity for me to see this. And it was fun.
I was for the record, I was and this is where I'm at right now. I was visiting my in-laws in Arkansas. And even if I had been there, I would be going through the exact same thing that you're thinking about right now, going, can I really walk into that snake pit and be surrounded by these people?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can.
And that's my fear is regardless of the outcome, you've got for us about like a 2.5 hour drive. So I've got to be first off sick to my stomach the whole day before, the whole week before. Then I've got to get.
I'm nauseous right now.
I've got to get up the second that like 7:30 hit on Saturday and Ohio State secured the victory. I was sick to my stomach. But you've got the whole week of nerves, all the trash talk, all the hype videos you can get. Then I've got to wake up super early on Saturday because it's a 2.5 hour drive, and we probably would have to get there.
You can't sleep your way up until kickoff the way you'd like to.
So we're gonna have to get there. We're gonna leave probably 7 a.m. Get there by 9:30 or 10. So it's an early morning.
At least
I'm gonna be sick to my stomach driving next to Jace. Then I'm going to be having to take probably 1.5 miles, maybe 2 mile walk to the stadium from where we park. Surrounded by all sorts of.
I was going to say you and I have done this walk. We did this for as fans at the Rutgers game, and then we did it for BG. But it's through like Tailgate Central, right up State Street.
And I've got to walk through that. Then I have to go sit in a press box that is a no cheering press box, which I already struggle with. Surrounded by Michigan fans. Then, regardless of the outcome,
you know I love you, but also. I can't imagine a scenario where we're not going, let's go.
Oh, Jace can attest to this. Every single Ohio State game we go to, they go, reminder, this is a working press box. Every single time.
And JP goes,
I go, I am working. I'm working on all my celebration techniques. And so I can't imagine Cade Stover catching a touchdown and me not being able to celebrate that. Then to make it worse,
you're just very stoically going, I acknowledge a touchdown.
That was
Stover.
for sure a nice catch. Yep. Then I have to leave that stadium and regardless of the outcome, take that same 2 mile walk, either very angry, surrounded by people cheering, or very, very happy, but unable to talk trash. Then do another 2.5 hour drive back with Jace.
And that's not counting traffic because traffic getting out of Ann Arbor is a nightmare.
And that is the thing I hate. We're looking
at a 5 hour trip back.
Yeah, it's not great.
So anyway, we're still on this. Needless to say, I'm going to go. I think.
You know what? Let's leave it up to a vote. Leave it up to a vote. Vote in the comments because this video will be out. If I should go to this, and if you want to watch a live stream of the drive back, we'll make that happen for you.
I make no promises that we will make that happen.
And it better not be random name bunch of numbers. So,
I do think that just a silent 5 hour live stream would be pretty hilarious. Because here's the reality: one of us is going to go home miserable.
Yeah,
like it's guaranteed. It doesn't matter how ugly the game is. If you win, ecstatic. If you lose, devastated. Doesn't matter how you get there.
And we had a gentleman's agreement. We did have a serious conversation, which lets you know how intense this rivalry is, where we literally looked at each other last Thursday and said, okay, if we both go, there is a promise that regardless of the outcome, we will not speak a word of this game
Nope.
Until Monday.
Until the podcast.
Till the podcast. So we won't talk. No discussion. We will throw on any other college game.
Auburn,
we will talk
Auburn,
about
Alabama plays right after.
Yep,
we'll put it up on Hulu.
We'll talk about other college games. We can talk college football. No word Ohio State or Michigan will be uttered in that car.
You can tweet till your heart's content. You can text people. But we are not talking about it.
Absolutely.
Period.
So you'll see.
I'll even give you, like, if you see Ohio State fans on the way out, like, you can yell and you can OHIO. Like, if I see Michigan fans, I'm going to get pumped. But there's no conversation about this.
Oh, see, I don't even know if I want to see that. I wasn't even going to do that to you because I'll fight somebody.
Oh man,
I will be unhinged.
Before we go into the actual game, so this is the conversation we're facing, which if you're from another college football fan base, I know we got a lot of Rutgers fans that are part of this. I know we've got our boys over at Meep Meep Nation, UTSA accounts. Like, unless you're in this rivalry, even the most intense stuff, like my uncle, I just saw him yesterday, my uncle is a huge Alabama fan. He hates Auburn. But he doesn't understand the intensity of Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah.
Like, there's just nothing
it's
like
a different breed, man.
Recap for me. And again, you can follow, because some combination of us will be there, at RivalPod, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as YouTube, where you can be watching this like you might be right now. Recap for me real quick, because I know we both want to get to the game itself. Ohio State plays Minnesota on Saturday. After the Michigan game, which we'll get to in a second, I needed a nap. So I caught little bits and pieces of Ohio State. We got some family stuff down here in Arkansas this week. But it looked to me, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, it looked to me like the first half was a giant gulp. And the second half, you blew them out of the water. Is that fair? It was 13-0 at the half.
It was just sloppy? It was never in the first half. It never felt like Ohio State wasn't in control. But then the second half, they came out and they said, yeah, we're done with this. And it's kind of what you've talked about all season with Michigan, of that boa constrictor, where they were like kind of playing with their food. And then they decided, this isn't as fun anymore. Let's just kill them and be done with it. We'll kill them and eat them. And it was like that mentality, where I think literally maybe the first or second play of the game was a touchdown. Then they immediately got a turnover and then scored again. It was just like a 14-point swing.
Yeah, because Henderson ripped one off to start.
Yeah, it was a 75-yard run. Which was just incredible. And so, it was very much that. It felt reminiscent of the Michigan State game in the sense of, Ohio State scored 37, but they could have scored more had they wanted to. It felt like they kept their foot on the gas for a majority of it, and then just were like, this game's done. Let's make sure nobody's hurt and whatever. There's not much else to say. McCord played well. Henderson played well. The one thing that I kind of ticked me off a little bit, is I understand the thought process behind it. But you go into senior day. It's the last chance some of these guys are going to get to play in the shoe. And to me, if they're a healthy body, or at least even healthy enough to go, you've got to give them their moment. And I'm not saying you need to go out and they need to play an entire quarter. I'm not saying they need to go out and play an entire series. But Ryan Day made the decision to sit Tommy Eichenberg. So Tommy Eichenberg did not play. He was nursing, I want to say it was a shoulder injury. He was given the green light to go. And Ryan Day said specifically that it was a fight between him and Tommy. Tommy wanted to be out there on the field to play his last game at the shoe. And Ryan he said it took all of the night before where they were texting. And he was saying, you're too important. We can't risk a setback before the game. I understand that. But there is a part of me that goes, Ryan Day just stole an opportunity, not an opportunity, a moment from a kid who absolutely deserved it. And
you're telling me he can't get in there for a snap?
And that's what I'm saying. Let him go out there for the very first snap of the game and take him out. Or let him go when it's a kneeled. I don't know. Get him on the field so that Tommy Eichenberg can get the recognition for the home crowd that he deserves. But taking that moment away from a senior and not letting him, I get that he got to go out onto the field as a captain. It's different. It's just different.
It is different.
Getting to put the pads on and be out there and walk off the field that you've worked hard on for 4 years And to get that, it just rubbed me the wrong way. Other than that, this game was super what you expected. It was had some highlight plays. Ohio State asserted their dominance like we all thought that they would. That was the only thing coming away from it where I thought, okay, we're going to have our people back. The only person you're going to be missing, barring any injuries from going on this week, will be Lathan Ransom. Proctor will be back. Eichenberg will be back. You've got Ibuka. He's been back for a little bit. Henderson's back now. You've got the talent, but that was the one thing walking away that it just irritated me because it felt like at the end of the day, these guys are they're kids still. They're young college kids.
Yeah.
And that is a moment that for a leader that has been so key to this defense deserved that round of applause from the home crowd. And for that to get robbed of him just irritated me a little bit.
When you hear Mark Price for 3, it probably takes you back to Old Richfield Coliseum, Gund Arena, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Hey, this is Aaron from the Mark Price for 3 podcast, and each week Mark and I discuss 3 topics: basketball, coaching, and of course, his faith. Subscribe to the Mark Price for 3 podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I obviously I get why Ryan may not want to do that. But it's little things like that. Like I think when Dave first started, I think, I had said, well, there wasn't nearly as much hate for Ryan Day as I had for Urban Meyer or for Mark D'Antonio or something like that. It's there, man. Like there's just stuff that I just go, what do you do? I mean, even the hit that McCord took at the end of the first half. Yeah. Like what are you doing? And whether it's that, obviously as a Michigan guy, I'm not going to like any coach that you have. I get that. But like it's stuff like that. It's his off-field comments. It's the we'll hang 100 on you. What's done in the dark will come to the light. I know that's Heartline, but like stuff like that where I just go, what do the inability to punt the ball or fake punt or like whatever's going on. There's stuff like that I just go, what are we doing sometimes? And it's just, I don't know. I enjoy the fact that he's made it a lot easier for me to hate him. So that's been fun.
Oh, I mean, same goes for Harbaugh.
Because I think for a while, and I love the fact that he's like really big on mental health and stuff. And so like that has made it hard to hate him. I think that's awesome. But also he does enough other stuff. They go, okay, we can still be angry at him. On the Michigan side, a really good first half against Maryland, followed by a really sloppy second half. The big question that people have been kind of poking at is like, is this a bad omen for Michigan or something? Last year, Michigan eked out a 19-17 win over Illinois in Week 11. It didn't matter remotely for the game. So, I'm not worried about it from that standpoint. McCarthy definitely did not have himself a very good day. It was very reminiscent of the Bowling Green game where just mistakes that didn't need to be made. And, and really, I mean, the most costly one is right at the end of the half. McCarthy throws a pick in the end zone. If you get that, if you get points there, you get a touchdown there, this game is 30-10 at the half. And then instead of trading back these like one score back and forth, you're still, you're up by 3 touchdowns. You stay up by 2 scores. It really doesn't get that exciting. And so again, my big thing is going to be issues are not solved or created in 1 week. And so I don't think that this is now suddenly a giant JJ McCarthy issue where we're concerned about this. He bounced back from the Bowling Green game and just strung together some really phenomenal games. I don't think could it happen? Yeah, anybody could play a bad game on Saturday. There's no question.
Yeah.
But is this a sign of terrible things for McCarthy? No, it's not. And I'm very impressed with how the defense played. The defense wasn't perfect. The defense got gashed by Tagovailoa on several drives.
Yeah.
But also the defense created what's that?
I said, and they got bailed out sometimes.
When?
We can discuss it in length a little bit, but the intentional grounding call at the end of the game was atrocious.
No, nobody in the pocket, nobody there. Threw it 5 yards away from a receiver, absolutely grounding.
No chance. A ref inserting themselves into the game in that moment.
Oh, get out!
Is garbage.
let me ask this: is it if he's not in the end zone and it's the first quarter, is it intentional grounding?
No.
Yes. Okay.
I don't think so at all.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The Michigan defense, though, played very well. The concern for me was that intermediate passing game. Tagovailoa really got hot, and Michigan played a soft coverage thing, and that's what they do. They're the number one defense in the country. They're a very bend don't break thing, and that works until you break. Mm-hmm. And they broke a bit in that third quarter. Again, is that a sign of terrible things to come? I don't think so, because they've shown themselves they have earned trust, and that's really what this game will come down to here. Is as we transition in, it's the same thing I said with Penn State. Who do you trust at the end of the day? And I trust Michigan's defense. Mike Sainristil still had himself a day. I don't know if you remember him from last year, but Mikey Sainristil still had himself a really good day. The defense continues to play very well. I'm not concerned. That's one of those ones where you go, okay, and you move on from it. Every other team in the top, I'd say top 10 at least, has had at least one game, many of them several, but it has had at least one game where they played with their food, right? Georgia kind of messed around with a couple teams. Florida State every week feels like they mess around, and
they were down 13-0 this past week too.
Yeah, well, Ohio State, even though they end up winning the games decently, but you could put Wisconsin and Rutgers both in there as games that they kind of played around a little bit. Those games weren't salted away until mid-fourth. So you've got teams that have done that. Michigan hasn't really had a game like that yet. They had one on Saturday. There's no question about it. So if everyone else is going to get a mulligan, I'm going to give Michigan one too, and we'll move forward. And I don't think it's going to matter for this weekend.
I think there are some key things going into this. I think I saw all the talk of people going at Michigan and saying how this is going to be some bad omen going into next week. I remember the Illinois game from last year, so yep. I don't really like that narrative because it's a new week, and to act like both of these teams are going to come in and kind of play lackluster is just not going to happen. Yeah. Both teams are going to be ready to go and energized.
I'll throw this out too, and thankfully it does not appear remotely as significant, but during the Illinois game, Michigan was in pretty good control. It was a tight game, but Michigan was on their way in to score at the end of the second half when Blake Corum got hurt and fumbled the ball. And then you have to adjust and operate without one of your key players. Not on the same level, I don't think, but Roman Wilson takes a big hit in the first quarter and doesn't come back in. Now, Michigan has other weapons around, but that's still your number one receiver.
Yeah.
That's still going to affect the way that things go. Now, does that affect McCarthy not being accurate? And no, yes and no. It's not an excuse by any stretch, but you are having to make a significant in-game adjustment like that. For the record, it looks like, from what I can tell at this stage on a Monday morning, it seems like Roman was in concussion protocol. He probably could have gone, but they wanted to hold him out. Very, very much a let's make sure you get right.
Yeah.
For the game.
You shouldn't have needed him.
Yeah, and again, I'm not on the ground in Ann Arbor the way that I'm not an insider, but that's my best guess, and I fully expect to see him suit up and be ready to go.
Oh, I would say the same thing. I think this game, the difference for me, and we can start going a little bit more in depth here for the game. There's some key things for Ohio State that I think make me believe that this year we can pull it off. A big thing is Travion Henderson. Last year we didn't have him. He was injured for part of this season, and he's come back. He's put up games of 162, 128, 63, and 146. He has been an absolute monster. He's helped create a different dynamic for this offense that you guys have to take account for now. It's not like last year where we have converted linebacker Chip Trainum, who is still good, but he was playing linebacker. He was coming in as a transfer from Arizona State, and he is now playing running back for us. It's not going to be one of those situations. And so I'm very excited to see him get back.
I will say this. Michigan's converted linebacker turned running back Khalil Mullings has 2 more touchdowns in Indy than Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's fun.
Well, that'll change this year.
That's it. That's it.
And so,
no, but I agree though. Travion Henderson is somebody that you absolutely have to.
Yeah, and
now.
you just I just don't think you had
even
that.
4 weeks ago. I wouldn't have said that.
And I just don't think, and I don't know if I would have, because I know that there have been numerous times on this podcast alone where I've not given him credit because the tape wasn't there. He was too injured for a long time, and I saw the potential his freshman year. But last year, what are you going to make of that? And then this year, he came out and he was fine, but then he got hurt again. So, but based off what he's been able to provide, the spark has just been huge for this Buckeye offense. It's helped them be more dynamic. It's opened up the passing game a lot. They've not looked as sluggish. Granted, you have to take into account some of the opponents they've played. But I think
the defenses have not been good.
Yeah, McCord has looked better. I think other areas they've gotten better. I think Stover got better this year. I think his stats have improved drastically. He's become a better blocker. He's been a better receiver. That's been huge. The biggest thing to me is the defense. The defense under Jim Knowles this season has been elite. Every single game they've been elite. And I think the biggest thing, we saw it last year where everybody thought this defense was really good, but they had one weakness that kept getting exploited in games. And it was the big play where they would play these teams, and they.
I thought for a half second, dude, I thought you were going to say they had one weakness, and it was Lathan Ransom.
Well, I mean, he was a big part of all of those big plays. Also, I can think of like 3 or 4, but they had numerous times last season alone where Lathan Ransom would slip or miss a read or miss a coverage, anything like that. And it would leave a defender wide open for like a 60-something yard touchdown. We saw it happen 3 or 4 times in the game last year. Saw it happen 2 times against Georgia. I believe it happened twice against Maryland.
That big one for Adonai Mitchell. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there were numerous times last season where the Ohio State defense just gave up too many big plays. And I don't know if this stat still holds true. But in early October, I want to say even the second week of October, there was a stat that came out that this defense had not allowed a single play of over 20 yards all season. And I think that Gavin Wimsatt and Rutgers actually broke that on that weird, janky fourth down conversion.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first one that killed it, but I don't think it's happened since that. And so this defense is not allowing big plays. I still hate that we're missing Ransom, even after talking all that trash about how he gave up big plays. His improvement from last year.
He's not great, but he's been more than serviceable.
He has been great this season, though, and that his improvement from last season to this year has been so different, and so that's what I'm most excited to see. I do think. You can't read too drastically into the Michigan offense, but I do look at McCarthy in the 2 games since Harbaugh's suspension. You didn't really need him to throw the ball against Penn State, but he only threw for 60 yards. Then you go and watch him play Maryland, and he goes 12 of 23, 141, and an interception. And I look at that and I go, okay, he hasn't been impressive. If I'm going off of who has been playing better as a team most recently, Ohio State has been that team. And I think that
I don't know that you can compare that though, because there's a difference playing Michigan State and Minnesota.
But I would say even when Ohio State has played, Penn State game, I feel like was pretty well evenly matched for both sides. But I think when you look at how Ohio State played Maryland, I feel like, and the final score shows that Ohio State played better. And when I look at J.J. McCarthy versus McCord in those games, McCord played better than McCarthy did both of those games. Granted, the Penn State game is different because Michigan ran the ball like 37 times in a row, so they weren't giving McCarthy to throw it. But if I'm looking at that from an outsider looking in,
and also on the road too, like that's not a non-factor.
Yeah, I'll take that into account for Penn State. I don't think Maryland necessarily matters.
So I was talking Penn State.
But yeah, Penn State, I'll take that into account. And like I said, I don't hold that game completely against him because you gave him 8 chances and he was 7 of 8 for 60 yards. Like, he was still efficient. Sure. You didn't need him. But if I'm looking at it as a whole, Michigan's not played playmakers like what Ohio State's going to bring to the table. You're going to have to account for Henderson. You're going to have to account for Stover, which I thought you had to last year, but this year even more so because he can tear you up. He can get you 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns.
Yeah.
Emeka Ibuka isn't a slouch. and you've got the best wide receiver in college football in Marvin Harrison, who you better double team or he's going to light you up.
I think it's a lot of, it feels like they're very different teams from 21 and 22 to now, but I don't think, and don't hear me saying that the talent on that offense doesn't scare me. Like if you're being rational, it absolutely should scare you. There are talents on all over that offense. But I think the key difference for me is I look at that and go, okay, well, in 2021, Ohio State had same caliber, actually, I would even say more phenomenal weapons, got beat. Last year, had a very similar cast of characters, got beat. And I don't buy that is more of a threat this year than in the past 2 years. And in fact, I would say that Michigan on the defensive side of the ball is better now than they were the last 2 years.
Well, and here's
so it's not saying that that's not a concern, but it's me kind of balancing out for the Michigan side of the narrative too, and going, okay, but this is not a, in years past it was, well, Aiden Hutchinson's going to have a Heisman caliber game if we have any shot to win, or Blake Corum is going to have a Heisman, and obviously he's out, so McCarthy had to step in. You don't have to have that. You just have to execute. You just have to be yourself. And that's true on both sides of the ball.
Well, and I agree with you in some aspects of it. I do think Ohio State has had better offenses the past couple of years, but I don't think you guys beat us the past 2 years because you stopped our offense. The way you stopped our offense was by not giving them a chance to score. And that's not you stopping them on.
I mean, that's stopping the offense.
Well, but I'm not saying. I'm saying it like this. The way that Michigan beat us was by going out there and on offense, going for 8 or 9 minute drives and scoring. And so our offense didn't have time to take the field to do anything. We didn't have the opportunities to go down and score as much. The talent was still there, but our defense was so not trash, but it didn't show up. Last year, it didn't show up. There were 4 or 5 big plays that resulted in touchdowns. You had the 2 from Donovan Edwards. You had one was Cornelius Johnson, and then was the other one to Barner or Colston? It was Colston,
Loveland,
right?
Loveland had one, and Johnson had 2.
Johnson, yeah. And so, Donovan had 2. And they were all lengthy plays. I mean, lengthy touchdowns. I don't see that happening in this year's game, and I think the ball is going to be in Ohio State's offensive hands more than it has been the past couple years. I think that's where you guys have won the game the previous 2 seasons, was by your defense didn't do the job of stopping our offense. Your offense did a job by putting together lengthy drives where you ran the ball, you wore down our defense, and then you scored. It wasn't we're going to go out.
I disagree with you, because they definitely had and I would say more so in 21 than last year. They definitely, the key turning points in those games were absolutely, look at 22, that 8-minute touchdown drive, absolutely true. But also, I mean, Michigan did have those, 1 play handoff to Donovan Edwards for a touchdown, 3 plays handoff to Edwards for a touchdown, or hey, here's a deep shot to Cornelius. Michigan did also have those big explosive plays. Now, I agree with you, though, that I think Ohio State's defense is going to limit those on Saturday. For me, the big difference on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan and the offensive side for Ohio State is when you've got weapons around you, like McCord does, he's got to have time to distribute. And I think that's where, for me, Michigan has the chance to really make him uncomfortable. Because, I've been in that environment. I watched C.J. Stroud come into Michigan Stadium, and I watched that offense take 5 false starts in the game. Now, home field advantage isn't everything in the game, obviously. Ohio State had a long streak where they were winning in Ann Arbor. Michigan won last year in Columbus. It's not everything, but in this game, it's not a non-factor. And there's a different level from playing at Wisconsin, even at Notre Dame, and going into Michigan for the game. Just like for Michigan, there's a difference between playing in Happy Valley and going to Columbus. For me, I think the big thing that I want to see is Michigan's got a very good defensive line. Ohio State's offensive line has been improved, but I think that can still be a weakness on that team. And I think Michigan is going to try to put – and I'm not talking about Dr. Blitz, Don Brown, where I can't cover a slant sort of thing. But I do think that Michigan has the ability to make I almost said Stroud to make McCord uncomfortable. And when McCord gets uncomfortable, and we've seen this, he tends to not make the best decisions. He tends to throw the ball behind guys or overthrow. Or I mean, we've seen him be mistake prone when he's under pressure. And I think that's going to be the big thing that I'm circling. Of all the things I could circle in this game, so much of football is obviously won in the trenches, right? Like if your offensive line doesn't have push, it's going to be hard for Henderson to run the ball. If Michigan's offensive line doesn't have push, it's going to be hard for Corum to run the ball. So for me, I'm circling the Michigan defensive line versus Ohio State's offensive line / McCord. I think that's a place where Michigan could win this game.
And I
think
agree.
there's many places, obviously, but I think that's the place that you said, Jace, highlight one thing that will determine that game. That's the one I'd circle.
And I think I'm circling it for the opposite end as well. I think Ohio State's defensive line, you saw it against Maryland, where when they've been able to apply pressure to McCarthy the past couple of weeks, he hasn't been as effective. And so I think for me, you got to get Jack Sawyer, who's coming off probably one of his best games in the Buckeye uniform.
He played very well.
JT Tuimoloau going out. He's been a stellar ever since last year. He's a reliable guy. I really like our secondary this year. I feel like numerous guys have been able to step up and make plays. And so for me, it is going to be the opposite. But the Buckeye defensive line's got to come out and put pressure. And then I trust our linebackers. I think Cody Simon has been really, really good. Steel Chambers, Tommy Eichenberg have got to be able to stop the run and fill those gaps. I 100% agree with you. I think whatever offensive line is the one that can hold up the most is going to be the one that team's going to succeed. And that sounds like a very generic, bland answer. But I feel like normally...
No, but I think it's accurate.
Normally there's such a clear winner between those. But I don't feel like Michigan's offensive line has played to their potential the past couple of weeks. And I feel like Ohio State's defensive line has been much improved. And so for me, it's going to come down to that.
I don't disagree with you.
So, all right, let's get to the nitty gritty of it now. Score prediction.
I'm nervous just thinking about this, man.
Same. I could throw up.
All right.
Also,
so
I just want to say, when you were spewing your hot garbage about Michigan, every single time you said a different point, your flag flung down just a little bit more. It's on like 2 more notches and it's off. So if you got 2 more things to ramble off.
That sounds like a you problem blaming me.
Did I intentionally not tape it up as well? Absolutely. But am I hoping that it's
no, our flag gets broken.
I was going to use it to cover signs. I figured Michigan would need that.
I'll throw this in there too. Here's what I love is that, the photos were making the rounds of like Michigan holding up signs, and Patrick Barron, which at Blue Baron Photo, phenomenal photographer, absolutely fantastic. Also does like a bunch of nature photos and stuff too. Blue Baron Photo. He's really cool. But Patrick had found a photo from like 2018 and he's like, "Hey guys, we've been doing this for like 7 years,
well,
right?"
That's what I was referring to was the guy. It was so funny watching the Michigan staffer like jumping to try and hold the flag up to block the camera. I'm like, imagine that being your job on Saturday as you and your other jabroni have to go stand in the circle and hop around like rabbits.
So, I mean, I'll take a swing at the score prediction here because it makes me sick. Not the score prediction, but but listen, we know you're going to pick Ohio State. I'm going to pick Michigan. Here's the reasoning. Here's my score. I think, and again, this could be here's the reality, man. This is the game.
Just get to the score prediction.
I think this is going to be a far more defensive, low scoring game than years past.
Okay. Same.
I think it's going to be, for me, I did not think that McCord played particularly well against Penn State. I thought he felt the defensive pressure quite a bit. I think Michigan can replicate that. I think that Michigan's defense, with that pressure from the defensive line, will force, whether we're talking about false starts or sacks or the intentional grounding issues, whatever. I think if Ohio State gets behind the chains, they start going into second and long, third and long, I think that's where Michigan's defense makes a big difference. I expect Michigan to do what Michigan does. I'm going to take Michigan 31-20. I think that
is not a low scoring game, Jace. 31-20 is not a defensive battle. That is 51 points.
45-27. Compared to 45-23, it is.
All right.
31-20, Michigan.
31-20. We've got some of that right. We're not crazy far off. So I think I agree. I think there's going to be a lot more defense for both sides. I think Ohio State's defense is just so improved that I believe in them a lot this year. I think their ability to stop the run, the ability to not give up lengthy, long plays is going to be huge. I like our secondary a lot more than I did last year. I felt like, I know we're going to be without Ransom, but having Denzel Burke back there, Jordan Hancock has been another guy that's really stepped up. Josh Proctor is going to be a leader back there. I think that's going to be huge. And then I think being just the playmaking that we have on the offensive side of the ball. I think Henderson being back, the way that he's been playing recently, I think the run game is going to be able to be opened up. Stover is going to be a reliable option. I'm going to go ahead and say Stover game, baby. I 100% think, and I feel like I've said that a lot this season, but I genuinely think in the back of his mind, he's thought about the Mike Sanderstill, what could have been. And I think that's haunted him. And I think he's ready to get that off his back. And so I think it's going to be a nice Cade Stover game. I think Michigan's going to apply some pressure to McCord, and that's going to be kind of his safety net for him that game. So I'm calling a big Cade Stover game. And I've got Ohio State 24, Michigan 20. I think it's going to be down to the wire.
My heart can't handle
if it
either
look,
of these.
Even writing that out, I could picture how it would happen. It'll be like 13-10 at half, something gross where we're like, we don't really know what's happening. No side is like a clear winner. And then Ohio State's able to pull it away on a big play. And I could see them having to have a defensive stand in the final couple minutes to stop you guys. And every single part of that sentence I just said makes me want to find the nearest trash can. Sick to my stomach.
Yep.
But that's what I've got. OSU 24-20. And Kyle McCord cements his legacy in Ohio State history and asserts himself as the starter heading into next year.
Well, and that's the amazing thing about the game is that, CJ Stroud's legacy, for as much as he did at Ohio State, whether you like it, and I'm not specifically you, but whether the fan base likes it or not,
cost him the Heisman.
Is tainted.
Yep.
And the only reason why is because you went 0-2.
If Kyle McCord goes out and plays incredible, but they lose the game, all offseason you're going to be hearing about how Lincoln Kineholtz needs to be the starter. He could go out and throw for 300-something yards.
And I don't know. There's multiple factors there why I don't know that that's the incorrect decision. But likewise, McCord could play. I continue to maintain he is good, not great. But if good, not great beats Michigan, it's great.
Mm-hmm. He ain't leaving.
If good, not great wins a Big Ten championship or wins a national title,
and whoever wins this game is going to have to play the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Big Ten championship.
Which. I'll say this. Of any team in the Big Ten West I don't want to play, that's probably the one.
Who else are you going to pick? They're the only talented team in there. So, I really wanted to see Northwestern somehow slip in there. I thought that would have been fun. It'll be Iowa. I like the Iowa pick only because I think that defense is legit, and I would be curious to see how either team honestly would play against that.
Yeah, well, and I suppose that's the only consolation if you lose this game is Iowa's defense. The best defense is their offense, Mm-hmm. So I do think that this is a question we need to address. Is the loser of this game done?
I don't think so.
Why?
I don't think so.
Because I disagree.
Because I feel like we've been proven wrong on that every single year. I feel like other teams are going to beat up on each other. And it's inevitable. You've got 5 undefeated teams. You've got Georgia, Ohio State, Washington, Michigan, Florida State. Florida State's quarterback, Jordan Travis, just went down with a season-ending injury. He's done. I don't legit think that they win the ACC anymore because of that. I think they're going to lose. So they're going to have one loss. And when it comes down to a one-loss team, who are you going to put in? Are you depending on the score? I will preface by saying that if either of these teams goes and gets blown out, by all means, yes. But if my 24-20 prediction is right, and regardless which way it spins, I think if you look at that and you go, okay, let's say Georgia goes undefeated, whoever wins Ohio State and Michigan, let's say Washington goes undefeated, which they have to play. Who are they playing in their championship game? Because has that been decided yet?
Presumably
Oregon. And so they'll get a rematch against Oregon.
That may be locked. If that may be locked in already.
I don't remember.
Let's assume it's Oregon.
One of the ones I know Georgia has to play Alabama, who's been playing great. They could realistically lose that. Florida State, I don't think is going to win the ACC, so then they're going to have one loss. So you're going to have 4 teams potentially as undefeated.
Here's what, and here's just why I don't see it though. Is even if Georgia wins out, let's say Ohio State, Georgia wins out, Ohio State wins out, Washington wins out. You're now looking at, Oregon, who would be 11-2. But they also made their conference championship. I think they've got an argument. I don't think they'll get in, but they would have.
But if they've got 2 losses, they won't.
And would you say the same for Bama then?
I would. I think Alabama could give Georgia
2
a
losses
run.
Is the nail.
I think so.
But you've also got Texas sitting there.
I mean, it's tricky.
You've also got Texas sitting there.
Because I think when it comes down to it, even if Georgia loses, so let's say Georgia loses to Bama, then I still think if you're looking at 1-loss teams, Georgia is going to make it in over a Michigan or an OSU.
Yep.
100%.
And so would Alabama.
And I would argue that. If Alabama wins, then I would say the same thing. But if Georgia beats Alabama and Georgia is still undefeated and you're looking at 2-loss Oregon, if they lose to Washington, you're looking at a 2-loss. I don't know what you do. Let's say Washington loses to Oregon. And then you've got a 1-loss Washington, a 1-loss Oregon, but they've beat each other up.
I think that's the concern, though, is I think even if you have Georgia, the Michigan, Ohio State winner, and Washington all win out, you've got 1 spot left there. Mm-hmm. And you're like, and you've got a Texas team that winning. Now, again, let's say 2 losses takes you out. That's fine. But if Texas wins that game, they have 1 loss, but they've got 12 wins and a conference championship. That's going to keep Ohio State or Michigan out.
I would probably agree with that.
And again, that's assuming that Oregon doesn't beat Washington. Oregon beating Washington, they're both likely to go. Bama beating Georgia, they're both likely to go.
I don't know.
I just don't see a scenario where the loser. In my unprofessional opinion, this is an elimination game. I just think there's too many other 1-loss teams that can still make their conference championship and still win it. I don't buy that 11 wins is enough. I guess it just depends
on the strength of schedule stuff, which I think if you look at Ohio State's resume, they've got the resume. If their only loss would be to a Michigan team that is undefeated and it's by a small margin, I think you still would look at their resume and go, okay, I'm putting them over Florida State, who might have 1 loss. I'll put them in over a Texas team who has struggled a lot at times. I'll put them over, like, to me.
But I don't think you can put them over Texas if Texas wins out. If Texas has 12 wins and a conference title, I don't think you.
That's what kills it. But I don't know. Is it decided who Texas is going to end up playing? Has that been?
I don't think it's for sure, but it's likely Oklahoma again.
Yeah.
Which
that's the thing.
As much as the committee is confusing at times, one thing, the combination of we value wins, where a 1-loss conference champion could have 12 wins and a conference championship. You're not going to defer to an 11-1 Ohio State or Michigan. You're just not.
Yeah, and I think that
so
if stuff stays relatively the same,
you better be praying.
Like
if you lose, the loser of Saturday had better hope Georgia beats everybody in their path, Washington beats Oregon, and that Texas drops a game.
Well,
that's you got to hope.
Yeah, that Texas has to lose, Georgia and Washington need to win, and Florida State needs to lose. Because if you're trying to go up against a 1-loss OSU or Michigan versus Florida State, based off the Jordan Travis injuries, they're going to be out. So you need Georgia to win out, Washington to win out, Florida State to lose, and Texas to lose, which are all doable.
And conversely, if your team wins on Saturday, you want the opposite of that to keep your opponent
yes, absolutely.
out of there.
Could you imagine?
Which is one of the reasons I think why USC lost like 4 or 5 games this year is God cursed them for letting Ohio State into the playoff.
Well, and you know what? We touched on this, and this can be the last thing before we wrap up. But we touched on it a couple of weeks ago with the Caleb Williams thing, where after the game there was video of him crying on the sideline, and we defended him. And I'm going to do the opposite now. Because after this weekend, after their loss, he declined to speak to media at the very end. And to me, that is genuinely a bad look. Like at that point, if I'm an NFL GM and I'm looking at that, the crying on the sideline actually makes me want to draft him more. But then when I see the lack of accountability at the end of the season, when you lost another game, it's been a down season, whatever team you're getting drafted by is going to be trash. They're not going to be, you're not walking into a phenomenal situation. So you're going to have to be able to put up with at least a couple of seasons where you're dealing with adversity like that. And if your first response to that adversity is, no, I don't want to speak to the media, that is a huge red flag for me. Yeah.
I'll finish out with this because my laptop just indicated that it's about to shut itself down in the next 20 minutes. Agree completely. Chaos. Here's the bottom line. Just win, baby. Like, if you're a Buckeye, you better not mess around. You better get the win because you may not get a shot at anything else. If you're Michigan, same thing. You may not get a shot at Georgia or Washington or Oregon or whoever. And also, like, if you win a natty, does it forgive all sins? It does, mostly.
But the game still counts a lot.
But what's in it? This makes no sense, and I get it. What matters more than the natty is winning this game. I'll say it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it just does. It does.
Real quick before your computer dies. Stupid genius. Won't matter in the score.
Brought to you by the J Company. Fall in love with your home all over again at thejaecompany.com. You got blown out 67.5-0. I think something like that.
I think I was close again this week though.
Give me a college football playoff buster this week.
I'll go Oregon State over Oregon. Are you chomping right now? The Gators? Is it Gator hunting season?
Gators, baby. 6.5-point dogs to Florida State. The Jordan Travis injury is obviously significant.
I can see that.
I also did not buy Florida State when they had Travis.
Yep.
They survived Clemson, a 4-loss Clemson in overtime. They survived Miami, who forgot to kneel against Georgia Tech. They went down 13-0 to North Alabama, whatever that is.
Why are we playing North Alabama in week 11?
Their helmets were like purple. It had stars wildly placed on. I was like, is this creative team in NCAA 14? What are we doing here?
We're playing Road to Glory.
This is FCS West. And went down 13-0 at home. Give me the Gators, man. I'm sick. Florida State cannot keep getting away with this. I think Florida, with nothing else to play for, they get it done I think it's in the swamp too. So I mean,
I believe it. Florida's always good. Florida is always good for one of those games, and I could see it. I've got Oregon State over Oregon because why the heck not?
Well, listen, Oregon State had a good shot at Washington.
They played well against Washington,
and in poor elements as well. So I mean, why not? Why not get a very uncivil war, if you will? Oh, goodness. Well, we're going to be sick to our stomachs, and you can join us for that journey at Rival Pod. Again, no idea who's going to be there. One of us will be, probably, and the other one of us will be.
Two of us will go, only one will return.
So, go Blue from me.
Go Bucks.
And we'll see you. Enjoy the game.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at RivalPod. Visit our Patreon and consider becoming a patron for exclusive bonus content, merch, and more. And be sure to follow us wherever you're listening now for new episodes every Tuesday. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.